So, Mocha,
Yes.
let the readers and viewers know a little bit about you. Introduce yourself. Let us know what you're doing, where you're from, all of that.
Doing a lot. So my name is Mocha. I'm from DC, the DMV. That's what they call it. Go City. I have a 21-year-old daughter, believe it or not. She's in her third year of college, thank God. And I do software sales.
Okay.
And so I am a software sales representative in a male-dominated world.
Wow.
And I'm an African-American woman breaking down the doors. So that's what I do on a daily basis. And that's kind of my story, where I am.
Okay, I love it. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Beautiful. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing, what your passion is, why we're here today.
So we're here today because my passion, I thought long and hard. I did radio, you know that, for
Yes.
about 8 years.
Yes.
I took a break the last 2 or 3 years. It was just a lot to do. So I was working full time. I was doing radio. So I just took a break. But we're here because I thought it was time for me to actually just talk about my story and be truthful. I think when people see me, they see this strong, independent, funny, outgoing person. But you know, behind the door, there's a story about me, and there's a story about domestic violence that goes with that. And so I am a woman of that. And the scary part about it is it was somebody that I loved. It was somebody that I trust. It was actually my daughter's father. And I was with my daughter's father for 15 years, believe it or not. And it took a long time to get from under that control that he had under me. And that control was not only physical at times, but it was mental control. Even after I left, so I did actually leave him, even after I left him years later, there was a mental control that went along with that. And it's just pretty bad. Yeah.
So give us a tangible example, because when people say, we know physical, the hitting, and all of that, and you know, we can understand that, but mental, can you speak on that? Give us a tangible example.
So mental would be someone, you know, as big as my personality is. Imagine somebody trying to suppress that daily of who I was.
Yes.
So kind of talking down on me.
Yes. So you come home with, babe, I got this going on. I'm ready to do this. I got this promotion.
Yes.
I got this new idea. And
making me feel less than, making me feel that I wasn't worthy. And at the time, my daughter was she was little, so it was between she was 1 and 5.
Okay.
He had an older daughter, and believe it or not, I raised her till she was about 14, and we got custody of her.
Yes.
So it was 2 kids in the house.
Yes.
So I'm this mom, you know, I wanted to, at that time, be a wife. We had got engaged.
Yes.
And then it was someone who was beating me down, you know, behind the door. And so I would go to work and be this fun-loving person. Yes. And then I would come home and be sad and be scared what to say, scared what not to say, or scared what I'm going to do, or scared if I had to go out with my friends.
Yes. How he would react.
In turn. And it just came to a breaking point where I wanted to break the cycle. And somebody like me, I mean, I was raised really, really well. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a secretary. They lived 5 miles from each other. So I had 2 houses. I had a house with a pool. I had 2 bathrooms. So you're speaking about somebody that was upper middle class. And for me to go through that, for one, I was thinking, how could it happen to me? And for 2, I was thinking, like, what would people think? If they knew.
If they really knew.
If they really knew what's going on behind that door, what would they think?
So would he call you names? Like you're stupid?
He would demean me, not so much calling me stupid, but things that I would do would be stupid to him. Or, you know, any kind of move that I would make, even with the kids, it would be question and re-question. I could have done it better or a different way. And why did I do it that way? Absolutely.
And that needs to be told too, because a lot of times with domestic violence, people think it's just the hitting. We can get that part, the assault part.
Correct.
There's also an assault on your mind.
Exactly.
And over time, your self-esteem goes low.
Oh, it went really low.
Yes. And then you're left feeling alone and sad, and it affects your health.
It affects your health. And I definitely was lost in a relationship, trying to figure out who I was. And what was crazy is kind of on one side, I knew who I was because I knew my dad.
Yes, like you know who you are.
This strong Navy guy, this engineer, this mathematician. And my mom was this strong, independent woman. And here I was suffering. So, through the course of that, what happened was, honestly, the breaking point was one day we were in there and he had got engaged to me, asked me to marry him a year before, got engaged, and I was out with the kids one day, and I was doing something with the children, came back home, and he was like, yeah, you know what? I just don't think I'm ready to get married. And I was like, who says this? Like, we've been together, for so long, and we're raising kids. And before you know it, we was in an argument. And before you knew that, he had hit me. And when he hit me, I actually fell into the dresser. And I'm a woman that has full lips. So imagine the top lip splitting this way and the bottom lip splitting this way. So I rushed to the hospital. My lips were like magnified. The doctor looks at me and he said, what happened? And I said, yeah, I fell into the dresser. He said, I don't think so. And he asked him to leave. And he leaves the room. And I'm thinking at this moment, what do I do? And I'm crying and I'm upset.
It's the father of your child.
It's the father of my child. It's the person I'm supposed to marry, I'm in love with. And he says, did he hit you? And I said, no. I said, he didn't hit me. He said, I think he did. And it was such an instant, and I protected him.
Yes.
And at that moment, I just didn't know what to do. And I've actually protected him all these years, right? I protected him. I had to, because this is my first time speaking about it. Nobody ever believes that this would happen to somebody like me. The story is being told today. And it wasn't the first time. Then a couple of years later, when we're going through a custody battle, my daughter went to this elite private school and I'm picking her up. It wasn't his day to pick her up. I'm picking her up. He shows up, and then he shows up in front of the school, and we're arguing in front of the school. There's parents, there's teachers, there are buses, and he hits me. And I have my daughter with me, and I just fall to the ground with her. And I was just so ashamed, and I was so embarrassed, and I was humiliated. And I just prayed and said, God, what do I need to do? And it was a breaking point for me. And I went home, and I promise you, I had nothing. I had this house. I had this white picket fence. I had kids. My daughter went to this elite private school. I had 2 cars in the garage, but internally I didn't have anything. Empty. And I decided that I had to leave. And I promise you, I packed all my stuff, what I had, which was my clothes, my daughter's clothes, a couple pieces of furniture that I had bought, and took it over to my best friend's house. And I was like, you got to help me. And she was like, I'll help you. And I took it over there, but through the move, me going back and forth, literally, he was coming out and my stuff was on the front lawn. So he got mad because I was leaving, and he started throwing my stuff out on the lawn, and I had nowhere to go. And I say that to say that, when you leave a man and you don't have anything, because we look for men to lead, we look for men to protect, we look for men to provide. And that's what I thought I had. But I really didn't have anything. The only gift that I had out of that was my daughter, and really her sister, because her sister is just she's grown now, but she's a beautiful girl. Yes. And she's a great example for my daughter. Yes. And when I left, I said I would never go back. And I never did. And that was 2002. And so imagine going over someone's house. I was living out of a suitcase at that time. Yes. I was still getting up, taking my daughter, and I was still actually letting him see my daughter throughout the process. And one day I decided, I said, well, I was planning to come to Atlanta anyway. That was the story. So my dad had already lived here. I had a touch of Atlanta back in 90, and I went back to DC, and then I came back, and I said, I want to live here. So my dad was getting sick. So I said, I want my daughter to be closer to my dad. Yes. Sure enough, I get a phone call one night. It's my dad. He's happy. He's like, I'll talk to you, later on. It was like 11 o'clock p.m., 1 o'clock, he was dead. He had a diabetic attack at home. And I just didn't know what to do. And I prayed, and it said, and God was telling me, you got to go. There's something there for you. You have to take your daughter and probably just show her something different.
Yes.
And so I brought my daughter here. And 3 years before that, my mother had died, and I had watched her die. She had literally died in the house. She had cancer. So I watched the cancer take over her, and she died in her house. And so through all that, I was fighting that. I was fighting my parents dying. And then on top of me moving and leaving him, then he filed for custody, but full custody.
So then you had to fight that battle.
So then I had another battle to fight. So I had to fight for full custody of my daughter. And at that time, I had already moved to Atlanta. So I was traveling back and forth to Maryland to make court dates. It was a mess. It was a mess. But, God is a healer.
He is a healer, and he's beautiful.
And he's beautiful.
Hence why you needed to. He moved you here.
He moved me here.
As this,
yes.
To tell your beautiful story.
Yes, he did.
Nurses Magazine.
Yes, he did.
he always has a plan.
Yes.
For life.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Somebody's gonna be blessed by that.
I hope so.
They will.
I hope so.